This was not someone walking away and being shot. He was holding it like a gun, not a baton, not a pipe, a gun. He was pointing at their faces and their heads like he was going to shoot them. Edgar Sandoval has a story about a Queens family which shows the complexity of the immigration issue. We have one son who was born here. He's an NYPD officer. His brother is a DACA recipient, brought here illegally as a child and now fears being deported. Their father is here on a legal work permit. The Daily News says there's an NYPD officer whose father is an assistant NYPD chief. The son was charged with felony sexual misconduct in 2015 for an alleged incident that happened in Atlantic City. At the time, he was a probationary officer. He pleaded guilty, though, to a downgraded health code violation, even though there was apparently video evidence of the original incident. The Air Force has suspended an officer who had served on the presidential security detail. He's accused of running a group that shared pictures of their private parts from various places around the world. Now, with so many pictures, he had so many that he had to actually store them on an external hard drive. Investigators found that, and the defense attorney, though, for Second Lieutenant Travis Birch had quite a quote in the paper. I won't get into that. I'll summarize. He says, "The Air Force is going after a private group that didn't commit a crime and was just having some fun." There's a former top Vatican diplomat at the embassy in Washington who woke up in jail this morning. He was arrested yesterday for allegedly downloading child pornography while visiting a church in Canada. This happened in December of 2016. His arrest took more than a year. It appears to be another chemical attack in Syria. We've been telling you about this as well, but a chlorine barrel bomb is what they believe dropped on a rebel stronghold town in Syria by President Bashar al-Assad's regime, although the government there denying it. Emergency groups, they're known as the White Helmets, they tweeted that entire families in shelters were gassed to death in Douma. There are reports of more than 1,000 cases of people struggling to survive after that. This picture has gone viral. This is three of the survivors of that bus crash that was carrying a junior hockey team in Canada, the head coach, the radio announcer, and the captain among the dead. The Post says that before a public housing event in East Harlem last week, that the governor's staff asked elected officials who were going to remove their own ties because the governor wasn't wearing one. Most complied with the request, some did not. On his 54th birthday, and what used to be his wedding anniversary, he's now in the process of getting divorced. Russell Crowe auctioned off some of his movie.
Okay, it's April 8th, 2018. That was New York 1 playing in the background. It's 8:48 a.m., 33 degrees. Once again, it's April 8th, 2018. See this terrible smoke blast here. We have to put up with this all day long. Every scientific report that you can read about the effects of carbon monoxide confirms even trace amounts of constant and chronic carbon monoxide exposure damages all the organs and will most likely shorten your life. I think this going on here is going to definitely be 5 to 10 years off of our lives. In fact, this smell is so strong I have to close the window soon. We did have some devices here, and we measured that right after the smoke blast, this carbon monoxide levels went up about 10 times from normal. So we're looking out of the windows of 255 West 43rd Street. We're looking direction northwest at the Twin Chimneys, operated by John's Pizzeria, whose public entrance is located at 260 West 44th Street. It says on their website their pizza ovens are over 800 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's what causes this black smoke. we'll switch over to New York 1.
How about this one? In 2015, the state of North Carolina paid an innocent man $750,000 after he spent 30 years on death row. He is considered intellectually disabled. Well, 7 months later, he was broke, preyed on by all sorts of people, family, people who pretended to care about him. There was never a trust set up for him to care for the money. Instead, that money was spent by others. There were predatory loans. There were crazy high legal fees. There were cars that were bought, you name it. He really got taken advantage of twice. In the business section, how is this for Big Brother? In India, they are scanning the fingerprints, eyes, and faces, and they're using that information on everything from welfare benefits to cell phones for the 1.3 billion people who live there, and most people have already had this done there. Below that, why primary care doctors are being shuffled to the side by giant retailers and insurance companies that are teaming up to offer more convenient services at more reliable times. We've got this story. This is a must-read, probably because I have a child in college, but former school chancellor Harold Levy, who suffers from ALS, sadly, and he's been told he is in his remaining days. He writes about the urgency he feels to speak out about the gap between the number of rich and poor college graduates. He says the system still extends far too many privileges to the privileged. Karen Jones is probably going to get some mail after this op-ed about what she's learned from sleeping with married men. She also has advice from some married men who think they're being kind by keeping their affairs secret. She writes, deception and lying are ultimately corrosive, not kind. And finally this morning, do you remember Mark Sanford, the former governor of South Carolina? He went missing in 2009. His aide said he was hiking the Appalachian Trail, but he was really having an affair. Well, some good news for his former wife. She has gotten remarried and says she's never been happier. These are just some of the stories you will find in the Sunday morning papers.
I wake up every morning at 3:08 a.m. exactly, and at 5:08 a.m., first Rail and Road report of the day. It's an honor to get the traffic report every morning. People are waking up with us, and they rely on us to tell them what their morning is going to be like. I love when viewers tweet me about the traffic. They help us put together the story and my traffic reports. There's so many things that can happen in a New Yorker's life, and it's a privilege to be able to tell them what to expect each morning.
No matter how perfect the weather may be, that can change in the blink of an eye. That's why Spectrum News has weather every 10 minutes. When you need the weather, we have the weather. Spectrum News, your 24-hour local news channel, has weather every 10 minutes on the ones. 1 after, 11 after, 21 after. You get it. Your next local forecast is just a few minutes away. Weather on the ones, only on Spectrum News.
10 newspapers arrive at my desk routinely. Now my morning comes again every weekday morning.